Hello, teachers. We are in session number, is this 4? Number 5. This is the kind of slick editing we do. High quality content is what you're getting. We're in Matthew 18, 21 through 35. This lesson is about forgiveness, and it has one of the most interesting parables that Jesus taught, in my opinion. It's a really incredible parable. The subject is obviously talking about forgiveness. And to give context, when you think about Matthew 18, you talk to Christians, you hear Christians talk about, Matthew 18, we got to do Matthew 18. What they're referring to most of the time is talking about dealing with this subject of church discipline. Jesus told those he was teaching that if you have aught with your brother, you need to go tell him his fault between you and him alone. There's a process. You got a problem, you go one-on-one. If he doesn't hear you, then you take 2 or 3 witnesses that every word will be established, he says. If he doesn't hear them, then you take it to the assembly. If he doesn't hear them, then let him be a heathen man and a publican. But on every step, step 1, one-on-one, step 2 with 2 or 3 witnesses, step 3, that every word is step 3 is take it to the assembly. That's a process. It's not Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but there is steps that go on that way. And Peter, who's hearing this teaching, factors in what he probably heard scribes and Pharisees teach, that there was a limit to how many times that you had to forgive somebody. I think what I've understood in studying this in years past was that the Pharisees taught 3 times. So Peter brings a question and asks about forgiveness. So that leads us to our objective statement, and then Jesus answers his question, and then gives a parable to help illustrate it. Every Christian should forgive others, and I would put in here every time forgiveness is needed, because of 3 lessons found in Matthew 18. Here's the first lesson, the lesson of incomputable forgiveness, meaning innumerable, incomputable. There's no numbering, there's no counting. Matthew 18:21. Then came Peter to him and said, Lord, how oft shall my brother sin against me and I forgive him? Till 7 times? He's probably thinking, they say 3. Jesus is pretty radical, so it can't just be 3. 7 is the number of perfection. Let's double it and add 1. Boom, knock it out of the park, right? Like, that's the forgiveness thing that Jesus wants, 7 times. Verse 22, Jesus saith unto him, I say not unto thee until 7 times, but until 70 times 7. Now, Jesus is not advocating for just a new higher number, 490. He's not advocating that I have a Damon Sarnes journal, and so that, Damon's on 487, he's got 3 more left. Like, that's not what he's teaching here. He's saying, essentially, as often as forgiveness is needed, then forgiveness should be given. That's the picture. That would have been like a radical idea. That's, even today, it's a radical idea. As I do counseling, as I meet with people, talk to people, even as I deal with my own hurts and being sinned against, that takes unusual spiritual fortitude to be able to forgive. I mean, some things, you walk by me on Sunday and you accidentally step on my toe as you walk by. It's a little bit of damage, a little bit of pain. That's not the hard part. What about the people that have been violated, people that have been despitefully used? Jesus says you're going to be persecuted for righteousness' sake if you're my follower. How do you forgive that? I mean, I'm being punished for what I did right? I mean, that's just crazy. And yet that's exactly what Jesus says, is you need to forgive that person too. As often as forgiveness is needed, forgiveness should be given. It's incomputable. It's innumerable. That's the teaching. And it's almost as if, and I can just imagine this as a conversation that Peter's having with When Jesus says not 7 times, but 70 times 7, that Peter may have gone 70 times. He might have been counting 400 carry the. I don't think it's that. I think it's probably more like, wow, I've never thought 490. What do you mean? So Jesus illustrates it with a story, a parable, right? And that gives us lesson 2, immeasurable forgiveness. Why should I give incomputable forgiveness, meaning I'm not keeping track, I don't keep record of wrongs, I'm just forgiving every time it's needed? Because of this immeasurable forgiveness. Read verse 23. Therefore is the kingdom of heaven, let me pause there and say, forgiveness like this is a kingdom of heaven thing. This is not a kingdom of earth thing. That's true. Kingdom of heaven is likened unto a certain king, which would take account of his servants. And when he had begun to reckon, one was brought unto him which owed him 10,000 talents. Now, as you read that, 10,000 talents is a number that probably doesn't affect us emotionally the way it would have affected them. This king and these servants would be more like people who were regents over areas under a king's kingdom. These are dukes and duchesses. These are governors. You have the king of the United States and the governor of Florida, the governor of Ohio, the governor of Texas, and they're supposed to take in the taxes, something like that, right? So they are responsible for stewarding enormous amounts of money. And 10,000 talents would have been a number that if you're in debt for 10,000 talents, you'll never be out of debt. You can work 24/7, 365 at a high-income job, and you won't even touch the interest on what's owed on that kind of debt. And so you've got this servant who has an unpayable debt. Pause. You and I had an unpayable debt. All of our righteousnesses are as filthy rags. The thing that we can offer up to God of our own good works can never outdo our wrong, what we've done wrong. Our good works can't make up for our bad works. It's impossible. And so like us, this guy, verse 25, as much as he had not to pay, his Lord commanded him to be sold, and his wife and children and all that he had and payments to be made. I mean, think about it. That's a cost you wouldn't want to pay. You want to just touch the interest on, pay your house, your car, your kids, all the money in your bank account, your everything, and you still have a lot that you owe, right? The servant, that's just overwhelming. Verse 26, the servant therefore fell down and worshipped him, saying, Lord, have patience with me, and I will pay thee all. The problem with that statement is that he couldn't pay them all. He didn't have enough. He's making promises that he can't keep to a person who deserves everything he has and more. Verse 27, then the Lord of that servant was moved with compassion. Wow. And loosed him and forgave him the debt. So you have a servant who owes more than he can pay. He'll never be able to pay it off, and he's forgiven. It's immeasurable forgiveness. 10,000 talents is just like this uncalculable number. This is 10,000 talents, but it's an enormous amount, right? That leads to the third lesson. Imitated forgiveness. Look at verse 28 to 34. But the same servant went out, found one of his fellow servants, which owed him 100 pence. Okay, that number is different. Not 10,000 talents, 100 pence. In comparison, 100 pence would be payable. It would have been an amount that guy could have paid back. But how did he respond? He laid hands on him and took him by the throat, saying, what? Yeah, exactly. Took him by the throat. Pay me what thou owest. I'm talking to Damon here. He's laughing and he's going like this. That's exactly what happened. Like, he sees the guy and he just seizes him by the throat And his fellow servant fell down at his feet. This sounds familiar, right? This is like take two of the same thing. And besought him, saying, have patience with me, and I will pay thee all. It's the same words, but it is different. Why? Because the first servant, the servant who, knelt before the Lord, the king says, be patient, I'll pay you everything, but there's no way he could have done it. This one, he could have paid, right? Verse 30, and he would not, but went and cast him into prison, which is stupid, right? Because how's the guy going to pay him back in prison? You don't make a lot of money in prison. So like, how would he pay? It's just dumb, right? Till he should pay the debt. And that's what we do when we have people that forgive. Like, we put them into a prison by not forgiving them. Like, we cut them off from our kindness. We cut them off from our grace. We cut them off from a relationship with us in some ways. And we put them in a place where, because of our own bitterness and unforgiveness, they couldn't pay us back in the first place, which is dumb, because then there's no ability to receive anything good for them, because you hate them, because you're mad at them, because you're bitter towards them. It's the same kind of stupidity. It says in verse 31, so when his fellow servants saw what was done, they were very sorry and came and told unto their Lord all that was done. Unforgiveness doesn't just wreck the relationship that you have with the person that you're not forgiving. That bitterness can seep into all the other relationships in your life. And here's that you have an example of that. They had a understanding of what should have been done. They had an understanding of everybody that looks at the guy who's been forgiven of all of the taxes for Florida for 2000 to 2010. If that was what you owed, like, and then you're like suing somebody because they owed you like $20 for it, they would be like, what a hypocrite. And that's exactly what they're doing here in the story. So what does his Lord do? The one who forgave him. Then his Lord, after he called him unto him, said unto him, O thou wicked servant, I forgave thee all that debt, because thou desirest me, because you asked me, because you wanted forgiveness. Shouldst thou not have also had compassion on thy fellow servant, even as I had pity on thee? And the answer to that is, yeah, you should have, but you didn't. His Lord was wroth and delivered him to the tormentors till he should pay all that was due to him. And the text goes on to say, Matthew 18:35, so likewise shall my heavenly Father do also unto you, if you from your hearts forgive not every one his brother their trespasses. He is not here saying, this is a parable and it's teaching one point. This is not a parable necessarily about soteriology, salvation. This is a parable about forgiveness and unforgiveness and how often you should forgive. And your relationship with God is not right. There is a lack of fellowship with God. There is chastening from God when you aren't in a disposition towards your brothers based on the disposition that God had towards you. That's the point. If God forgave you an unpayable debt, then in comparison, any violation that someone's done to you is payable. It is forgivable, and you should forgive. We don't forgive based on that person's deservedness of that forgiveness. We forgive based on Christ's forgiveness of us. Paul put it this way in Ephesians, be ye kind one to another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God, for Christ's sake, hath forgiven you. Guys, sometimes when we teach our lesson, we've got it really locked down. If the lesson is on Jesus' identity, we have confidence. We know who Jesus is. This kind of lesson is a lesson about forgiveness. And, the concept, you should forgive, you should be a forgiving person. That's good. But if you're teaching this lesson and that there's some ought you have with somebody and you have it, you ought to go deal with them and offer them forgiveness and get things reconciled and right, and you're not doing it, it's not good to go stand up and teach people to do that if you're not willing to do that. So if there's something between you and somebody else, you need to go get it right and forgive them and be forgiven and do it. Not because they deserve it, not because you deserve it, but because Jesus did that for you. I hope it helps. Have a great